There are hidden walls that exist between every rank in Rocket League. To pass the walls at the beginner ranks, it could be as simple as learning the aerial, or learning a concept like rotation. But as you progress, the walls will become more and more demanding. And by the time you reach the wall that divides champion from grand champion, the basics won't cut it anymore. The requirements to pass the walls at the peaks of Rocket League will take more than just the foundations. These ranks aren't given to people by chance. It is only earned by the people who are willing to do whatever it takes to reach that level of understanding and claim the rank for themselves. It is time to know what separates you from the most elite ranks in Rocket League. These are the hidden walls between Champion, Grand Champion, and Supersonic Legend. For every rank in the game, there are walls that separate them from each other. Each wall represents a new level of game sense and understanding. If you want to pass the wall, you will need to have the game sense and other skills fitting for the next rank. For the walls between Platinum, Diamond, and Champ, it only requires understanding and applying surface level concepts like rotation, recovery, defense, and offense. But the walls between Champion, Grand Champion, and SSL are far more complex. These four concepts are just the foundation. Any rank past Champ will already understand them. Instead of talking about these basic concepts, I will be replacing them with three new and more advanced concepts that are more appropriate for higher ranks. These concepts are Positioning, Patience, and Control. These three concepts have a much larger difference in higher ranks, so it's easier to explain the progression of game sense with these. With that out of the way, let's start at the very bottom, the beginning of high-level Rocket League. Champion is the first rank where all four basic concepts of game sense are fully applied. When it comes to the three new advanced concepts, they don't have a good understanding. Since this is the first rank we are talking about, I won't talk about the environment of Champ, and will only be going over the difference between High Champ and GC1. Positioning is one of the biggest differences between Champ and GC1, so learning how to position correctly might be the last thing you need if you want to move on to the next rank. There is a problem with the positioning in Champ. It is very subtle and most people wouldn't even notice it, but there's a very small change that GC1 players make that will massively change the outcome. There's a difference in understanding when it comes to rotation and positioning between High Champ and GC1. Champ players understand rotation as a concept, but they only find themselves in decent positions because they are rotating. In Champ lobbies, players find themselves in the position to challenge with just rotation, but they rarely take the initiative to position knowing that they'll need a challenge soon. I have mostly seen them react immediately and then decide to go on the spot, instead of actively positioning themselves with the intention to challenge from the beginning. Their position is good because the rotation is good. In GC1, their positioning isn't just good because of the rotation. It's great because they position knowing exactly what they'll need to be ready for. Awareness allows them to understand what's happening, and they will use that awareness to position with the intention to challenge. Each player is reading the situation and actively positioning for the play that's happening. That small difference of intention between the ranks is everything. With the awareness that GC1 players have of what's happening, they are not only able to think ahead, but position with better intention behind it. With Patience, the players are actively using their current position to patiently watch the situation, instead of just blindly going when they happen to be in the right spot. The positioning in GC feels much more intentional. They are aware of what their task is, and are conscious of what their positioning should be if they want to complete it to the best of their ability. The difference between positioning in High Champ versus GC1 is intention. Now that we have positioning out of the way, let's go over the patience that GC1 players have over Champ. When it comes to patience, Champ players either don't have enough of it or don't understand it enough to use it properly. Patience is the ability to wait when you know a better outcome or opportunity will happen from doing so. In Champ lobbies, players will rarely show patience, and there's a lot that they're leaving on the table in some situations. With the awareness of Champ players, they're able to think ahead, but they don't think ahead when it comes to the benefits of waiting in a specific spot. GC1 players display some level of patience. Even though it's only at a very basic level, it's still a massive improvement over Champ. Because of their awareness, they're able to position with the intention to challenge. With better positioning, they are fully able to use their awareness to watch the play, and can understand when a better outcome will happen if they just wait in their position. GC1 players don't fully understand patience, and they only tend to display it when they know they're getting beat to the ball, or when they know they have time to correct their position. These moments where they have to correct their position is a common mistake that GC1 players make, but their initial position tends to be good enough to make these corrections. These instances where they know that patience can create a better outcome makes the intention behind each play much more clear, and the execution of each play becomes much better. At GC1's patience and awareness makes every attack more dangerous and every action more meaningful. Control is the final concept that needs to be talked about. Even though the jump from High Champ to GC1 can be difficult, the understanding of control doesn't change by a large amount. The two major differences between these ranks are how often they control the ball and how good they are at it. In GC1, they tend to control the ball a lot more often when they're on offense. Many offensive plays will involve basic ground dribbles, with some air dribbles in the mix as well. As you go up in rank, the consistency of players will increase, and the progression of high champ to GC1 isn't any different. The consistency is better, but not by a lot. The difference in control is very small. GC1 is one of the biggest milestones in Rocket League. Being in this rank means that you're in the top 1% of the player base. This rank starts at 1435 and ends at 1574. GC1 is the first rank where it takes a lot more than just the basic foundation to reach. The 4 concepts I talked about in the last version of this won't be enough to reach this rank. This is a massive milestone, and you also get a massive reward for it too. This is the first rank where you're able to get a glowing title just from completing the rewards. Other than this rank being a milestone, the rank itself is not all that interesting, so let's just move on. The jump from GC1 to GC2 is an extremely difficult one to make, and it will take a very long time for most players. This rank will require a massive leap in understanding of the 3 advanced concepts that I introduced. To reach GC2, you'll need to make this massive jump. The positioning in GC1 is a lot more effective and cleaner than high champ, but GC1s are still making mistakes that make their position look sloppy compared to GC2. The positioning in GC2 is much more refined. They are better able to play for more possibilities and understand when their position is good. They're also a lot more spaced out compared to GC1. This is because they're much smarter with their positioning and have better mechanical abilities, so they're able to cover more things. In GC1, players are in the correct position because they know they'll be needed, but it has many flaws in comparison to GC2. In GC1, they have to correct themselves all the time to get to the right position for a specific play, but not play the situation from the start. With them needing to make corrections so late, it will cut off many opportunities where you could have gone if you just had a better position. They're in a good enough position to correct themselves when they need to, but not in a good enough position to play the exact situation at the exact moment when they are needed the most. GC2 players will correct their position earlier, so they're able to go at the right time. Instead of positioning as a response to the play like in GC1, they position way before they decide to commit to the ball. Making these corrections ahead of time, instead of being forced to make them much later, will allow these players to interact with the play much more effectively than GC1. The positioning in GC2 is far from perfect, but it's still a massive game sense jump that you need to make. Patience has been one of the biggest improvements I've seen among GC2 players. These players have a better idea of what situations will turn out better if they wait. This patience is displayed mostly when it comes to positioning right before a challenge, and also in defensive situations. The patience that they have right before the challenge is what allows them to use their position more effectively. Instead of jumping in and correcting their position as they go, they are being patient and waiting in the perfect position to correct themselves. They will then challenge from their good position and at the right time. On defense, they tend to wait when they're unable to safely challenge from their position, or when they're already in a good position to defend and don't need to make any changes. GC1 players will display a small level of patience on defense, but GC2 players will do it more effectively with better positioning and better timing. The main difference of patience on defense is how often they make the right decision. Control is another concept that has improved massively. In GC1, the level of control wasn't bad, but compared to GC2, the difference is blatantly obvious. GC2 players have reached a completely new level of consistency where they almost never miss the ball and can control the ball in almost any situation. The level of control has increased a lot, but it is still far from perfect. Mistakes still happen all the time in GC2, but their ability to maximize the danger in each play is a major difference between them and GC1 players. Control isn't only about mechanical ability. There's also a lot of game sense that is required to make it work properly. The difference in control-related game sense between GC1 and GC2 isn't exactly night and day, but there are a few improvements. In GC1, players tend to control the ball mainly for offense, with some light usage in other places too. The control game sense in GC2 is still lacking compared to the higher ranks. They still throw away the ball too much, but they do control the ball slightly more often than GC1. Overall, the mechanical ability had the biggest difference, but the game sense for how they control the ball didn't improve all that much, and still need to work. The jump from GC1 to GC2 is a very hard one to make, and the gameplay is starting to look more like SSL. This rank starts at 1575 and ends at 1714. GC2 is currently the most unique rank in Rocket League, and many high-ranked players might already know the reason why. 1660 is the highest MMR that a player can be reset to at the beginning of each season. This is the first rank where the difficulty of it will completely change depending on how early it is into the season, and where top 100 currently is. This is something that I like to call the MMR economy. At the start of a season, every high-ranked player will be reset to 1660. Every GC3, every 2K peak, and every top 100 player in all the pros will be the exact same rank as you. When this happens, the MMR economy will be extremely deflated and condensed. A 100 MMR difference within the first 24 hours of a reset could be all that separates a player who peaked 1700 last season from a high-level RLCS pro. Because of how deflated the MMR economy is, the matchmaking will be awful for the players who are on the lower end of that reset. If you are a 1600 to 1700 player, you are almost guaranteed to face players that are much better than you, and they'll prevent you from getting to your usual rank. You will likely struggle in a rank that's lower than usual for roughly the first month or two of the season. This is something that GC2 players have to deal with at the beginning of every season. It can be a little rough for GC2 players, but the higher the rank you want to get to, the more the MMR economy is going to affect it. For the next two ranks, we'll be assuming that the MMR economy is similar to what it would be at the end of a standard 3-month season. GC3 is the final mountain that you need to climb before SSL, but first, you need to know what's required to reach this rank in the first place. The positioning in GC3 has made another improvement. GC3 players have started to make their corrections in real time, instead of making them ahead of time like in GC2. This might be a bit confusing, but it'll be best to go over the progression so far. In GC1, I said that they position with the intention to challenge, and are in a good enough position to make those corrections. In GC2, they made the corrections ahead of time before challenging. Now in GC3, they make the corrections in real time, while constantly being in the position to challenge whenever they want. They are similar, but the positioning in GC3 is like a combination of the positioning of GC2 and GC1, while taking the best of both worlds. GC3s are constantly positioning themselves to be in the perfect position to challenge, just like GC2. The problem with GC2 positioning is that they make these corrections, but they're often too far away to make the most out of their positioning. Some GC2 players will think that they have the perfect position, but fail to take into account the time it takes to challenge. GC3 players fix this by being able to judge how far they can be before it becomes a problem. They keep a good distance and make corrections instantly in real time. They are making corrections in the moment like GC1, but there's a difference in their level of positioning and intention. GC1 players are fixing a mistake that they made, and are only in the position to make the correction. Unlike GC1 players, GC3 players aren't making a mistake. It's all intentional. They are always positioned and ready to instantly play for the possible outcomes that can happen. This allows them to be faster to the ball compared to GC2 players. They have a much better judge of distance and will know exactly how far they need to be to minimize the risk, and how close they need to be to never miss an opportunity. These players are extremely alert, and there's almost no delay or hesitation in the position that they take. They are constantly adapting to your play and are always ready to challenge you. That's what makes their positioning so dangerous. Patience has made another massive jump between the ranks. GC2 and GC3 players will both wait when they're confident that it'll bring a better opportunity, but the way they display their patience is completely different. In GC3, players have started to understand how to be a factor even when being patient. When GC3 players are defending, they'll always reposition themselves to account for what the opponent is and isn't able to do in their situation or position. When they isolate the possibilities and only position for the ones that are able to happen, they'll always look like a threat, and put pressure on the opponents while doing almost nothing. GC2 players don't do this on defense. They're just going back with a respectful distance, but never try to take advantage of the things they can and can't do in each situation. For general patience, they have better timing and understand the benefits of being patient in each situation more accurately. Their understanding of patience mainly increased on defense, but when it comes to offense, it's still lacking to some extent. The control in GC3 has a new level of understanding. There's a lot more than just mechanics that goes into control. The previous ranks didn't understand this all that well, but GC3 players are starting to realize how deep this concept really is. Players in GC3 are starting to control the ball in far more situations than just offense. It's not just control by dribbling, it's also getting controlled touches with the sole intention of keeping possession. This leap of awareness and game sense is one of the most noticeable differences I've seen between these ranks. This understanding is very far from being complete, and there are many levels of control that go very deep into high SSL. The understanding of control not just being a tool for offense, but a consistent part of every aspect of your gameplay is starting to happen in GC3. The understanding isn't all that high, but compared to GC2, it's massive. If we're talking about the more basic levels of control, like the ones talked about in the other ranks, GC3 players aren't all that different mechanically, but they are far more consistent and have better execution. When you get past GC2, the mechanics themselves don't change all that much. GC2 players can already perform the same mechanics that SSL players can. The primary difference is consistency and the execution of them in each situation. If you've made it to GC3, congratulations, because you're now at the final stretch. This rank will start at 1715 and end at 1874. There isn't anything all that special about this rank compared to GC2, but there's one thing that I'd like to mention. It is very common to see SSL players in this rank, especially as you're moving into 1800 MMR. You're starting to get really close to SSL, and the skill of the lobbies that you'll be placed in will make that very clear. If you've already made it to 1800, you have a real chance at getting SSL. Remember, ranks aren't given to people, they are earned through your own effort. You have passed every wall to get to this point, so don't let the countless hours you spent getting this far go to waste. There's one more wall you need to pass if you want to be part of the most elite Rocket League players in the world. Before we talk about the positioning, I'll just say that SSL has many levels of gameplay. It can range from skill levels that are comparable to GC3, all the way up to pro level. I'll only be comparing GC3 to the best qualities that you'll see in 1900 gameplay. This is so that the difference will be more clear between the ranks, but it won't be an entirely different world. Also, the patience section will be removed, because the concept has taken a completely new shape. The positioning in SSL didn't make a leap that was similar to the other ranks. Other than the positioning being much cleaner, it's just a massive leap and multiple smaller things that make a huge difference when combined. As I said earlier, patience has started to change into something else. When you get to a high enough level, patience isn't just an abstract concept anymore. It becomes part of the deepest foundations of your game sense and gameplay. Patience is the ability to wait when you know a better outcome or opportunity will happen from doing so. SSL players are taking this concept to the next level. There are sometimes moments in their positioning right before they challenge, where they either stop or slow down slightly right before the challenge happens. It is easy to overlook, but this right here is what it looks like to display patience at extremely high levels. They wait to get an even greater benefit from the situation they're currently in, but the amount of time they spend waiting only has to be long enough to see the benefits. People don't understand that patience doesn't have a time limit. These instances where players are being patient can last a fraction of a second. They don't do this for every challenge. It is only when the benefit from doing it is obvious. These small moments can give benefits from many different things: a better touch on the ball, better positioning, more dangerous timing, or even other things like taking your teammate into consideration and delaying your challenge for them to be in a better position. Being able to display patience at this level isn't something that can be done easily while conscious of it. This is something that happens when patience has become deeply ingrained in the very foundations of your gameplay and understanding of Rocket League. When it comes to isolating possibilities, I mainly talked about this happening on defense. GC3 players will actively isolate the things that you're currently able to do from the things you can't. They will then play for the things that you're only able to do in your situation. This allows them to limit the things that you can get away with, and get an easier save while doing almost nothing. In SSL, this has been expanded upon to a much larger scale. In SSL, it's not about using your position to make an easier save. It's about positioning to make the best possible outcome happen. They position not just to save the ball, but with the intention to force a specific outcome to happen that will be beneficial to their team. It is very subtle, but SSL players often isolate possibilities for almost any play with their positioning, just like the GC3 players. The thing they do better is that they'll understand the risk of every possible way of defending their attack. When they understand the risk, they will choose the way of defending that gives the best result. That subtle action can make a massive difference in lobbies where everyone is able to make a threatening play with very few resources. There's a much stronger intention behind their actions, and it shows in their positioning on defense. In SSL, they have a better understanding of what a player is able to do in each situation, so the distance between them and the play is much more optimized. The higher you go in ranked, the more that subtle differences will become the difference. There's a sweet spot in every situation. It's a spot where you're far enough to defend against any threats, but close enough to capitalize on any opportunities to challenge. In GC3, they have a better understanding of distance, but there are still times where they make the wrong choice and end up too far on either extremes. SSL players are starting to get closer to constantly being in that perfect spot. The line will shift depending on the scenario. Sometimes being very close is the right answer, and other times the right answer is to be extremely far away. Every play has a perfect distance, and SSL players are starting to find that more often. Since this is low SSL that we're talking about, they'll still stray from this line far more often than what I would like. Overall, the positioning in SSL has evolved in a way that lets them focus on getting the perfect result, and not just the good one. Control is starting to reach more complex levels. After GC2, the mechanics don't change all that much. It's only the consistency and execution that changes. This is the same even for levels that go well into SSL. Compared to GC3, consistency and execution weren't the only change. The understanding of control itself has increased massively. SSL players fully understand that control isn't just for offense. It is for any time that you want to extend your possession that you already have. When you have possession, you're able to control the outcome of a situation. If you want to maximize what you're able to do in each play, it is important to understand how useful control can be, and how it can lead to new opportunities. SSL players know how beneficial control is, so every part of their gameplay is starting to show it. Not only has their understanding of control increased, but their application of it has also started to push new limits. The definition of control is having possession over the ball and actively trying to create more options to extend it. Dribbling the ball isn't the only way to keep control, and SSL players know this very well. These players understand where they're able to hit the ball while still having control over it. With their awareness of what's going on, they have a stronger ability to judge what they can get away with in each situation. This is what makes their control so much better than the other ranks. For everything that I mentioned, the thing that SSL players have that GC3 players don't is the ability to take advantage and maximize the benefits that they get from every single situation. They don't challenge immediately every single time. They see an opportunity to squeeze more benefits out of being patient. They defend while thinking of a way to turn into a counterattack. They have the perfect distance to defend against every attack, while being close enough to challenge when they need to. They control the ball in almost any situation for the sake of getting the most out of every moment of their gameplay. They are doing everything they can to get more out of the situation. These players aren't fixing mistakes like the previous ranks, they're only fixing their imperfections. Every play has intention, and they'll take every opportunity to make an opportunity. The ability to make the most out of every little situation is what it takes to be an SSL. If you've made it to SSL, congrats, you are now in the top 0.04% of Rocket League players. SSL starts at 1875 and doesn't have an end. The main thing that makes this rank special is the diversity of skill within the rank. Even though you're at the same rank as pros, you're still only halfway up the mountain. Just because you're SSL doesn't mean you're at the very top of Rocket League. SSL has a hierarchy, and when you first enter the rank, you'll be at the very bottom of it. In a strange way, SSL starts to become the beginning of Rocket League, and not the end. Just like the previous ranks, there are walls that exist even within SSL, but they are far more complex and they will require many more layers of game sense. The hidden walls within SSL is something that really gets talked about, but that's a topic for a different time. The topic right now is understanding why you haven't subscribed yet. If you thought this was helpful, I talk about a lot of other things in depth as well, and I have many more things planned in the future, so if you don't want to miss them, you know exactly what to do. But anyways, thanks for watching, and don't get tilted.